We're all on plugins these days. Plugins are my life, but as being in this business a long time, I'm really sorry to see so many of the hardware boxes, the variety of processing and options that we have, they're going away. Now, everybody makes plugins, and there's lots of different graphic interfaces, but you know, there's a certain variety that we're pretty much getting away from now, and I don't want to get philosophical about it, but as I've watched various analog boxes go to the wayside, I am absolutely determined to keep the TC Electronic and a couple of other things over here in the rack, including my old Kurzweil K2500 sampler, which comes in handy when it comes time to fiddle around with sound effects and do little doinky cartoony things on the keyboard. Fabulous box, and I wouldn't go to a plugin. I wouldn't go to a VI for that because this has just been my friend for so long, and as long as he keeps going, he's got a place in my rack. The space has gotten smaller over the years, and the demands of work haven't changed. So I've sort of had to select and pick and choose what hardware I keep with me. And TC is going to be one of those devices that stays probably as long as TC is a company, still supporting it, because there's so much variety of capability built into it. As I may have said earlier, it's always on during the mixes. It's always on every day. It's always performing some function as I'm working. This mix here is for National Geographic. It's a show that'll probably air a couple of months from now, so maybe it'll be old hat by the time you see this, I don't know. But at the moment, there are 3 functions. I've got 3 engines running during my mix. One of the engines is the LM5, the loudness display, something really important in our industry, and I'll talk about that in a second if you'll let me. And I'm also using one of the engines to upmix my music from stereo to surround. And National Geographic has different specifications than some other channels, and some of the parameters that I can adjust of UnWrap will allow me to sort of tailor my favorite settings to hit National Geographic specifications. And then tomorrow turn around and hit History Channel specifications. For instance, National Geographic won't allow me to have any music whatsoever in the center channel. And in fact, if I were to take their specifications literally, I can't have surround music. I can only have stereo music. And according to their specifications, they only hit left and right. Now, I know them. They've told me it's okay. If I really want to have surround music, that they're not going to knock it back. So therefore, I have surround music. And the reason is they want me to deliver surround shows. They want it big and fat and full. But you can't do that if the only thing that shows up in the surround channels are occasional ambiances and things. You can't have fun that way. But if you can keep those rear channels alive with part of the music track, it makes it so much easier to get creative with the rear channels, to have things that would normally, if the surrounds weren't already alive, something coming from back to front would surprise you and startle you, and it would sound out of place. But if those surrounds are always alive and sounding good and happy, you can start to have fun and put things back there and make motions that you wouldn't normally be able to get away with, because you're no longer distracting the viewer, you're just adding to the richness of the sound. It's really important to have recallability when we're doing mixes, because heaven forbid something should change a week after the mix is over. Obviously, we need to be able to hit a button and have everything come back the way it was. So with that in mind, one thing that I've learned to do with TC's box is to automate with MIDI. Now, I'm mixing in Pro Tools, and as we all know, Pro Tools records MIDI, and the MIDI gets saved along with all the audio and everything else. So as long as I've got some good presets to start from in the TC Electronic, and those can be factory presets, or I've got quite a few of my own that have just sort of evolved over the years. I can start with a preset, and then I can use MIDI automation to tweak the parameters and turn it into the box I need for any particular scene. For instance, just speaking of automation and MIDI, in this particular show, I'm running all the music through upmix, through UnWrap algorithm. And depending on how the music was mixed already, I'm feeding LFE material, the low frequency material, into my LFE channel. And sometimes, depending again on how the music is mixed, the surround channels will either sort of be kind of dead and flat, and they'll need a little boost, or they'll be way too much. So it's very important that I can control, if nothing else, just the amount of volume that goes into those channels. I could do it in Pro Tools, but it's so much easier to just set up a MIDI channel and record fader moves from TC into Pro Tools, and then they're stuck there forever. So, for instance, if I'm mixing away here, let's see. We'll go. Here's my UnWrap, and I've gone to the output display where I can select individual channel volumes. Now you notice that I have the center channel turned off entirely, and that's because for this particular specification, it's required. I'm going to start the playback now, and I'll just have music soloed up. One of the things that gets really important, and I don't know if I won't turn the volume up too much in here, but some of the music gets very thuddy. This particular composer loves his bass drums, and when he's trying to build tension, and by the way, the show's about a beating heart and creating a human heart. So obviously there's a lot of thumpity thump 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 kind of music going on, but we don't want that to get too heavy in the LFE. So by simply setting up a MIDI channel in Pro Tools, I can hit record at any time and take any of the parameters that I want and fiddle around with the fader setting. So for this particular music, let's say I want that fader setting, I can ride that throughout, or once I've got the setting where I want it, now the setting will be there. And what's really cool is I can determine that setting as the music is playing, but now I can just simply take the MIDI region, slide it backwards so it's at the beginning of that particular piece of music, which I've got my channels out of order here, but if I slide it up here, now that little region there, that has my volume change. It changed the LFE channel from -10 down to -26. So this is obviously just a test. It's not particularly real. But I can slide that change now to the actual area where I want it to hit. You see that big thump there? That's what I want to get rid of. So I've slid the change now, and the LFE channel, I'll zoom in a little, the LFE channel changed somewhere in there, and it goes down, and it's now at the level I need for that. And once I've played that area, we get past this big swell, and now I go into record. I can do this all in one pass, and I just simply slide the LFE back up where it was, and I'm done. So now I've automated that, and that gets saved along with everything else. I can do the same thing for the surround channels. I can do the same thing for the algorithms. I can select a close or a lateral or a diffuse algorithm or whatever is appropriate for that particular piece of music. So I can make all of those automation changes with MIDI. And I prefer doing it that way than trying to set up time code and having a separate set of automations that I need to save for all of posterity. This to me is much more natural, and it's very easy. Once it's set up, it's so easy and intuitive. I wouldn't do it any other way. I do the same thing when I'm using the reverb algorithms. If I've got reverb set up on dialogue and for sound effects, I often need to change spaces and change parameters. And in fact, you know, it's like you have a big dramatic thing and it goes into one of those long reverb swells. You can automate that just by grabbing the fader, calling up the parameter, grabbing the fader and automating that change. And again, that stays there forever. And in fact, I can even go in and edit the MIDI if I really want to get anal about it, and make it an exact setting by editing the MIDI rather than reperforming here. So this recallability is something that's very important to me, and having that capability in TC Electronic, still having all the juiciness of the processing and the algorithms that are in here and the wide variety available, but having that automation that really flows as part of one Pro Tools session is very important. That's why I think this is going to be here for another 10 years at least.